It's my pleasure to be here today. First of all, I have to express my condolence to the family of the victims who lost their lives in this heinous attack by Hamas. And I have to say that I'm deeply sorry for what happened and for what is happening in Holy Land. So once again, thank you very much for this nice introduction. Just a minor correction. I am living in Canada, but my work is in the state. Philos Project is a center that is in New York. We recently opened a new office in Washington, D.C., but the main office is in New York. So as you probably know, today I'm going to talk about the Iran factor. But before going into detail about Iran, I just want to give you a brief introduction of what is happening. That would be actually the state of obvious, because you are now at the middle of the conflict. You know better than me what happened on October 7. Hamas launched an unprovoked and unprecedented attack on Israel, and unfortunately carried out a brutal massacre of hundreds of unarmed civilians, and created the bloodiest day that Israel has seen probably in more than 5 decades. So they killed 1,400 people. Correct me if I am wrong, Dr. Cohen. Probably I am not most updated.
1,400.
1,400. Okay, so they killed 1,400, and unfortunately, the majority of these people, of the victims, were civilians. They were gunned down in their homes, or many of them were burned to death, and they beheaded over 40 children. And I think they also took 130 Israeli hostages to Gaza. And among those hostages were grandmothers, and they were mothers, young children, girls. And yeah, so this issue left Israel and you guys in absolute state of shock. So that's the current state of affairs in the Holy Land. And once again, I need to re-emphasize that when it comes to these issues, you know better than me what is happening in there, because I am just an observer, but you are at the middle of this crisis. But let me give you a brief background of how Hamas came to power. So as you know, in September 2005, when Israel, I think this was the time of Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, when Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip, the hope was that the Palestinians could eventually determine their own fate, and they can transform the Gaza into a prototype for a peaceful and a stable Palestinian state. But that withdrawal basically gave Hamas the opportunity to seize the Gaza's governing institutions. So Hamas basically defeated Fatah, which was its Palestinian rival, in an election. Hamas came to power democratically. But once it came to power, it refused to renounce violence. It refused to accept the Oslo Agreement, and also to recognize Israel. So at this stage, they kept attacking Israel, and in response, Israel took a number of measures, like cutting down the entry points in Gaza. I think from 6 entry points to 2 or 3. Well, two. They cut it from 6 to 2. So these entry points were really important. Why they were important? Because get goods and people in and out of Gaza, which basically help Palestinians, not Israelis. And that means the Palestinians of Gaza were paying the high price for what Hamas did, for Hamas action. Not, I mean, well, of course, Israel paid the price by losing some civilians, but Palestinians also in Gaza, they also paid the price for Hamas action. So since the time that Hamas took power in Gaza, it initiated a number of attacks, several conflicts with Israel. I think that started with 2008, 2009 attack, and then one in 2012, another one in 2014, the next one in 2021, and now in 2023. Of course, there were some small skirmishes, but these were the major conflicts that they initiated with Israel. And with the help of the Islamic Republic in Iran, Hamas could build its own military arsenal, its own military infrastructure, and it also constructed miles of underground tunnels, basically to protect its own fighters and weapons, not the Gazans. So now, the most important question is, why Iran? That's the question that I am going to address today. So, to give you a proper answer, we have to go back to the early years of the Islamic Revolution in Iran, which happened in 1979. And the revolutionaries in Iran, Khomeini's in Iran, they decided to form Hezbollah in Lebanon. That's the starting point that Iran got involved in this whole issue. Here again, there's another important question, and that question is how and why Iran formed Hezbollah. That's probably the most important question that I am going to address today. So, to give you a conclusive answer, we have to go back to the early years. We have to go back to as early as the 1970s. This is the time that Lebanon was an early example of a failed state. So Lebanon was basically plagued with corruption, struggle over profit from flourishing narcotic trades, and also civil war, right? So at this time, Yasser Arafat, the head of PLO, who was expelled from Jordan, he understood that the government in Lebanon is weak, and this weak government is basically not able to challenge him. But he did not count on the pushback from the Christians in Lebanon, and also to some lesser extent to the Shiites, who were basically unwilling to host Arafat and his violent group. So Arafat and his violent group, the PLO, started to shell Israel from the north, and in response, on June 1982, the Israeli Defense Force crossed the border to start the Operation Peace of Galilee, which basically ended in Beirut. The IDF ended in Beirut, and so at this time, the goal was to, Israel had two goals at this time. One goal was to dismantle the extensive terrorist structure of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the Arafat group. And the second goal for Israel was to install a pro-Israeli government in Lebanon under Bashir Gemayel. But what happened next was interesting. Bashir Gemayel was assassinated I think in September, and the Christian phalangists in Lebanon retaliated by massacring some 800 Palestinians in Sabra and Shatila camps. I think more or less you know about it. The IDF did not participate in that atrocities, but the international community basically condemned Israel. So condemnation of Israel now is not something new. It goes back to that time. So at this time, Israel was facing a severe backlash from the international community. So the IDF eventually decided to gradually withdraw from the South Lebanon to the security belt and in the south of Lebanon that was controlled by the IDF with the help of the South Lebanon Army, which was a Christian militia that it controlled. So at this time, Iranians who sought to destroy Israel, they seized this opportunity to form Hezbollah in 1982. So Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic, at that time he was actually president of Iran. So he said that to us, there is no difference between the frowns in south of Lebanon, the frown in south of Iran and south of Lebanon. So there is no difference between these two. So they started to train Hezbollah, and they trained Hezbollah several asymmetrical tactics against American forces and against Israel. And those asymmetrical tactics were including kidnappings, hijackings, and suicide bombing. This was also known as the poor man's smart bomb, suicide bombing. So, and the first suicide bombing case was started with the case of Ahmad Qasir. I think he was a teenager from the village of Deir Qanun. So the first case of suicide bombing happened on November 1982. And this teenager, Ahmad Qasir, drove a car which was packed with explosive into the IDF headquarters in Tyre, and I think killed 75 people. And then another case happened in 1983 that a suicide bombing destroyed the American embassy in Beirut that killed 63 people. And that was including the guy, the chief of the CIA in the Middle East, that was killed in that suicide bombing. Another case, again, happened in October 1983, that a suicide bomber drove a truck into the Marine barracks in Beirut that killed 240 Americans. And another case happened right in the same day that killed, I think, 55 French paratroopers. So this was known as the mini 9/11 attack on Americans. And this tactic was really smart because Iranians knew that this tactic will inflict maximum casualties on their enemies, which is highly sensitive to the loss of human life. So this was a smart tactic. And as a result of this tactic, Israel and the United States and French, they eventually withdraw from Lebanon. So that's why I'm saying that this was a smart tactic, right? Another asymmetrical tactic that Iranians taught Hezbollah was abduction. And this was also another smart strategy from the part of Iranians because this helped Iran with trading hostages for arms. And you probably are aware the most famous case of this incident, the trade, the arms for the hostage for arms, was the case of Robert McFarlane. McFarlane's trading hostages for arms, which later became known as Iran-Contra affairs. So the McFarlane basically delivered 700 missiles in exchange for releasing the hostages. And one interesting thing happened here was that they abducted 3 Americans. They released them in exchange for the missiles, and the time that they received the missiles, they abducted 3 more Americans. This thing that is happening right now. They abduct Americans. They kidnap Americans, and in exchange for money, they release them. And the moment that they receive money, they abduct more Americans. So another popular tactic was roadside bombs, which deployed against the IDF and its South Lebanon army, which was partner to the IDF. And this tactic was also important. It was also effective because this was a low cost and easy to manufacture device. It just like it cost just I think few $100, and it was really easy for the IRGC to train the Hezbollah fighters, and that killed and wounded a lot of Israeli soldiers in South Lebanon. Another tactic was dispersing weapons and infrastructure and fighters among civilian population, and they hide them in local houses and public institutions and other civilian institutions to basically to minimize the cost of their own actions. And they hide them in hospitals and mosques and among civilians. So basically they use human shields. No matter if people get killed when their enemy bombs those infrastructure. So, and basically they had justification for that, because Ayatollah Khamenei and Ayatollah Khomeini said they justified this act by saying that, you know what, this actually gives Muslims the opportunity to become a martyr. You see, so they got religious justification for this. And so by using this tactic, by hiding among civilians, basically the Revolutionary Guards and Hezbollah at that time, they presented Israel with a dilemma. Israel had to, if they had to respond, the IDF had to respond, they will be faced international backlash, and this would be the violation of international law. If not, then they use civilian infrastructure against Israel. And then one more tactic. This is important, and I will tell you why it's important. The Islamic Republic eventually reconstructed Hezbollah to act as a deterrence against any possible attack by Israel against its nuclear infrastructure. So this is how the Islamic Republic and its Revolutionary Guards started to form a proxy group against Israel. Now, the next important question is, what are the benefits for Iran, and what this situation basically created in terms of Iran's project to dominate the Middle East? This is also another important that I am going to answer. So there are two major benefits for the Islamic Republic for forming proxies, arming proxies, training them, and funding them. The first benefit is that proxy groups, including Hezbollah and Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, basically they help Iran with its project to destabilize the Middle East, to dominate the Middle East. And that will basically give the Iranians a disproportional amount of control in Sunni countries. So basically Hezbollah not only so they will help the Islamic Republic to control the Middle East. And now we know that with the help of the Islamic Republic, these proxy groups, what did they do to their own countries? I mean, well, I just mentioned the case of Hezbollah as an example, and we know that how Hezbollah destroyed Lebanon. Basically, we know that people now, they have no electricity, the trash are not collected, there is a shortage of medicine, there is no money to buy food. There is a horrible situation in Lebanon, and Hezbollah and the Islamic Republic should be responsible for that. It's bad enough. It's a horrible situation. But Hezbollah became the Islamic Republic's Uber proxy in this larger project of destabilizing and dominating the Middle East. So, and we also know that Hezbollah helped Iran to save Bashar Assad in Syria. And they trained Houthis, they trained the militia in Iraq, and they provide them weapons, they provide Hamas with weapons, with training and funds and everything. The second important goal for the Islamic Republic of initiating, forming, and training and funding terror groups, proxy groups, is to destroy the state of Israel. Now, to understand this, you have to understand the Khomeini's eschatology. According to the Khomeini's eschatology, at the end of the days, and according to this Khomeini's ideology, Jerusalem must be in the hands of Muslims. It should be returned to the hand of the Muslims, because otherwise Mahdi, the 12th Imam, would not come. And that basically means Jerusalem has to be liberated. Israel has to be liberated from the Jews, and that means the destruction of the state of Israel. That's where the venom and hate is. And Hassan Nasrallah has basically adopted this Khomeini's theology. So, and for this purpose, they also have mobilized Sunni Islamists, including Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And Hezbollah became basically a major provider of weapons and strategy and thing to these terror groups in Israel. Now, the final part of my talk is, given this whole situation and given the recent attack by Hamas on Israel, what are Israel's options? Well, you've probably heard that many people are now talking about the ceasefire. They call for ceasefire. International organizations, world powers, they call for ceasefire. And now the question is what Israel can do, what Israel should do. Well, the truth is that Hamas, as we know, has regarded every ceasefire that was negotiated with Israel as an opportunity to buy more time, to rebuild its arsenal, and to get ready for another war, right? That's what we know about Hamas. And that's how Iranians trained them to do so. So I believe early ceasefire for now would only benefit Hamas, not Israel. Another thing that I know for the fact is that Hamas also wants to trade hostages. My understanding is that Israel may not consider trade at this time. Well, my understanding is that it's likely that Israel's response to this current situation would be something similar to the United States response to Al-Qaeda after the 9/11 attack. What would be that response? Eliminating the Hamas leadership and destroying its military infrastructure, and also eliminating large number of Hamas fighters. I mean, this should be the response. Hamas should not maintain any military ability to threaten Israel again. Otherwise, not only it will attack Israel again, but it will also encourage other radical forces in the region to attack Israel. This will greenlight other regional proxies to attack Israel. And by the way, this will send signal to regional countries as well, not only the proxy groups. This will send a signal to Arab countries who are now trying to normalize the relationship, and those who already tried normalize that relationship, that Israel is actually weak and if they keep pressuring Israel, Israel would give up more. So making ceasefire with Hamas is really counterproductive, and Israel, I believe, should not give up until it's eliminate the terror group, it decapitate the leaders of the group, and to eliminate the members of large number of Hamas members. So I believe demilitarization of Gaza is really necessary, because this will cause Hamas not to be in a position to threaten Israel once again. And by the way, this will benefit Palestinian as well, right? This will save a lot of lives in Palestinian in Gaza of Palestinians. So, but at the same time, I understand that this will not be easy, and Israel probably has to pay a high price. That's what we know. But again, this is really necessary to reestablish deterrence against the terror groups and also against the Islamic Republic. That is my understanding of the situation, and I try to cover everything. I know the time for me is limited. I don't know how many minutes that I talk, but that's my reading of the current situation in Israel. Thank you very much. And yeah, if you have a question, I will be more than happy to answer if I can.
Thank you, Farhad, Dr. Rezaei. And I believe some of the audience has questions or comments to add. So
For sure.
Anyone?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rezaei, for your lecture. I wanted to ask a question or suggest a topic for discussion. So how do you think will Iranian proxies from Lebanon and Syria join the war? And if yes, what type of joining the war will it be? I mean, will it be only launching rockets, or a full-scale terrorist infiltration, or partially terrorist infiltration? Thank you.
Right. Well, this is a great question. If you still remember, I said when I was talking about the asymmetrical tactics, I said that in the final point, I said the Islamic Republic restructured Hezbollah to work as a deterrence against any possible attack by Israel on its nuclear program. So from my understanding, Hezbollah's main responsibility for now is to protect Iran's nuclear program. What does that mean? That means I don't really think that Hezbollah and the Islamic Republic would be willing to let Hezbollah enter the fight, because they need that massive arsenal for that possibility. That if it happens to attack Iran's nuclear program, then that arsenal would be used for that purpose. Let me tell you something. Excuse me. In 2006, when Hassan Nasrallah abducted the Israeli soldiers and the war broke out, then there was a document published by the Islamic Republic's National Security Committee, and they criticized Nasrallah because Nasrallah, in their view, destroyed the military asset that they had, that they need for that possibility, for a potential Israeli attack. So this time around, it won't be different. Again, they need that massive arsenal for a different purpose. Hezbollah is not just a terror group to harass Israel per se. It's a terror group, it's a proxy group with a massive arsenal to act as a deterrence for any possible attack. So what does that mean? That means Hezbollah may not enter the war in support of Hamas because they need that military arsenal. But look, remember, what is happening now, it's a dynamic situation. We don't really know what is going to happen tomorrow, right? Something may happen now that changed the entire situation. for instance, if the Islamic Republic tomorrow decides that, okay, this is the right opportunity to build the bomb, right? Because look, it's a matter of a political decision for the Islamic Republic to build the bomb, because already they enriched uranium up to 84%, which is very close to weapon grade. They have the knowledge, they have the technology, they have everything. It's just a matter of political decision to say, okay, now it's the time to build the bomb. If that happened tomorrow, then we can expect Hezbollah to enter the fight, because this will create a very, very tough situation for Israel, and it won't be able to attack Iran's nuclear infrastructure. If that decision is made, we can expect Hezbollah to enter the war. Otherwise, I personally do not believe that Hezbollah is going to join the war. I know there are some, low-scale conflicts on the border. They fire at Israeli defense force, but this is not going to be a major conflict. That is my understanding.
Thank you.
But one more factor that I would like to highlight is that Lebanon is not in a good situation. As I just mentioned, there is no working there is no operating president, no working prime minister. Even the trash are not collected. There is no electricity, no medicine, no money to buy. Hezbollah, Lebanon is in a misery, right? I don't think Hezbollah would be able to initiate another war without taking responsibility, just like other times, right? So they know that if they start a war, Israel's response would be devastating. As Lebanon is already in a mess. They don't want to make it much worse, right? So that's another factor to consider when it comes to, thinking about Hezbollah's entering the conflict.
Mr. Markey?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you, Farhad, for the very insightful information. I have one question, which I think still has to be confirmed, but there was news about China is deploying warships, 6 warships from the Mediterranean to the war theater in Israel. How much this could, disturb the level of power there, and what do you see how far this can go? Recently, BRICS, including China, Russia, tried to dethrone the dollar. So China seems to be now declining power, but climbing up regarding its military actions. So that was my question. How do you see that? How can this impact the whole situation? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. But can you make it a little more clear that when these forces are deployed and where exactly? Because to be honest with you, I am not aware about this.
Okay, well, that's the question. As I told you, so there are news from 21st on in US and UK media. I was trying to find out in German media and Israeli media, as well in Chinese media. So until now, I didn't have track. So there is also the thing of fake news and making people wild. But according to some of the sources, it's credible that these ships were rerouted. They are already in that area. They just have been moved closer.
Right. Closer to Israel, you mean?
Yeah, closer to Israel. But again, to confirm this information, it's very important. And I was trying to reconfirm that. Until now, there is no, for me, with my past, no security relevant confirmation.
Yeah. Well,
but that's a question still. So, if it's true, which seems to be logical, then
I put it on the chat for you.
Right.
Farhad, you can open the link. You can read that China is sending ships to the Middle East.
Almost, I got the whole idea. Let me tell you something. First of all, China is a rival to the United States, not to Israel. We know that China has a good relationship with Israel. As a matter of fact, I think China's relationship with Israel is more robust than China's relationship with Iran. Russia and China only use Iran as a, when they need. They are not allies, right? But there is a stronger relationship with Israel. So I don't really think that they would enter any conflict with Israel on behalf of Iran or Hezbollah or any other country. So that's for sure. But let's not forget, they are rivals to the United States. And that rivalry, I don't think would enter any sort of military conflict. This is against China's strategy. Chinese are trying to build themselves, the country, economically. Of course, recently there was in the news that they developed a strong nuclear arsenal. I think they added more than 500 new nuclear weapons to their arsenal. But again, I think military conflict with the United States is on their plate, is on their agenda. No, that I don't think. So one more thing, their relationship with Iran, China and Russia's relationship with Iran is just a factor to build well, again, I am hesitant to use the term alliance because it's not alliance, but that would be against the United States. They just want to, because Iran is basically the most aggressive country in the region that is against the United States. And that policy is in line with China and Russia's policy towards the United States. Again, I don't see Israel factor in this, in this whole situation.
I sent you in DM another question regarding the financing of Hamas. If at a later time
what would be the role of the United States should other Iranian proxies try to enter the war? Look, this is actually a good question.
That's not mine.
This is Boniface? No, the upper.
Yeah.
Yes, I was the one that asked the question.
Okay, so here's my answer. To weaken all these proxy groups.
Question, Farhad. To the upper question or the lower question in the chat?
Well, I can see the question, what would be the role of United States should other Iranian proxies to enter the war?
Okay, start with it and later to complete.
Okay, are there another question? I'm sorry, my apologies. Okay, Hamas supply of weapons. Don't forget the EU and US World Bank funds. Several $100 million flowed into Gaza. Well, that is true. Unfortunately, one big mistake in the part of the West, including the United States and European countries, is that they provide that fund to the Palestinians, and that fund directly goes to Hamas. And that is really unfortunate. So I believe the best strategy, well, first of all, I'm going to give an answer that, that would be an answer to the first question and the second question from Boniface. To counter these terror groups, the best possible strategy is to pressure the Islamic Republic, because that is the main force behind these proxy groups. That is the country that officially sponsors terrorism. It provides the terror groups with weapons, with money, with training, with everything. So if you want to pressure the terror groups, first you have to pressure the supporters, the force that sponsors them. That is my understanding. Iran now is in a much weaker position. Why? Because it has been under sanctions for a long time. I know that from the time that Biden administration came to power, that maximum pressure campaign was losing. But still, Iran has a problem, financial problem, and that financial problem has actually affected the terror groups as well. We know that Hezbollah, for example, has recently closed some of its propaganda machine TV channels. Why? Because they don't have money, right? So this is a great factor. If the United States and Western powers want to pressure the terror groups, they have to pressure Iran. But look, I am not optimistic. Why? Because if you, again, since the time that Biden administration came to power, they loosened sanctions. And unfortunately, as I can see, Biden administration still wants to make deal with the Islamic Republic. So I am not optimistic about, imposing more pressure on the Islamic Republic, but I know that's the most effective one. If you want to destroy terror groups, you have to get rid of the Islamic Republic. That is the best possible option. Otherwise, how can you destroy Hezbollah? Probably one possible solution is for the international community to invade Lebanon, right? But do you think they can do it? I'm not optimistic about that. I mean, why they should do that to get rid of a terror group? They can't do that, right? So the best possible solution is to impose pressure on the Islamic Republic, to get rid of Hezbollah, to get rid of Hamas, to get rid of Hashd al-Sha'bi and other proxy groups in Syria that encircle Israel. Iran controls 19 terror groups, 19 proxy groups in the region. For what purpose? To encircling Israel, to harass Israel, to disrupt the state of Israel, right? 19 terror groups. And we know that they fund $1 billion to Hezbollah, over $500 billion to Hamas and to PIG. That's a lot of money. And the only way to prevent this is just to pressure the Islamic Republic. Alex, please.
Alex. Mr. Greenberg. Alex?
Well, probably that's a mistake.
Yes, he raises his hand to, probably he has a question, but he is driving, so probably no connection. Any other to ask Dr. Rezaei? So if not, Farhad, you can conclude and we will finish.
Well, once again, the conclusion is that the Islamic Republic in Iran is the major force behind all these terror attacks on Israel. Yeah. Alex, how are you doing?
Hi, درود بر شما.
Good to see you here.
Well, do you hear me? Thank you
Yeah,
for.
I can hear you. Yeah.
My question is, judging by what I see on all the channels on Telegram associated with Pasdaran, Niru Yarutz, all Iranian proxies, they took a decision to escalate. So my conclusion is that is it true to say that the Islamic Republic doesn't care to escalate in a limited manner as long as the regime doesn't pay a price tag for its doing? Because the Iranian Republic doesn't really care if even thousands of Arabs die for its cause. And
that's right.
As of now, it seems that judging by Abdullah, the foreign minister saying, Abdullahian, that if Israel continues its aggression against Gaza, the axis of resistance wouldn't stand idle. So let's suggest that if the strikes on Gaza intensify and they simply Hezbollah wouldn't be able to preserve its credentials of resistance if it does nothing and contents itself with the sporadic shootings on Israel's territory. Is it true?
Right, right. Well, you raised a very important issue and a very important question. Yes, the mullahs in Iran, they want Arabs to die for them. They don't want to die. They love their lives. And that's the reality now. Doesn't really matter how many Arabs, how many Palestinians are going to die for their cause. Because, as long as they are untouched in Tehran, you can expect they continue with their bad behavior. That's one thing. But look, we know Iranians. They try to pretend that, okay, they are ready to enter the fight, but this is not going to happen. Once again, I need to create this parenthesis that this is a very dynamic situation. Something may happen tomorrow that changed the whole situation and they enter the war, right? But in a normal condition, I don't expect them to enter the war. I don't expect them to greenlight Hezbollah to enter the war. This is just, but I understand that they are now in a very big dilemma. And the dilemma is that if they don't enter the war, their brothers in Gaza will get dying. Hamas will be eliminated. I mean, that's my understanding of Israel's resolve. They have to eliminate it. Otherwise, they will reinforce in a few months and they will come back and they will attack Israel. So that's my understanding, that Israel is going to destroy the entire terror infrastructure. So here's the dilemma for the Islamic Republic. If they stand idle and do nothing, their military asset, Hamas, will be destroyed. And at the same time, on the other hand, if they enter the war, the consequence will be really high. It's not like easy, okay, they can enter the war and this time they will get away with it. We can expect more direct attack on Tehran, either by Israel or by the United States or by both. So this will not be an easy choice for them. That's first. Second, Hezbollah will not get away with it. I know the consequence for Israel would be high. That's one thing that I said earlier. Israel is going to pay a big price, that's for sure. But Hezbollah and Lebanon is also going to pay a heavy price. The Islamic Republic is going to pay a heavy price. And the regime leaders in Tehran know it well. Let's not forget that Iran now is in a very bad situation. Domestically, they face several crises. Economic crisis, social crisis, political crisis. They are in a very bad situation. I assume that if the first missile would explode in Iran on any nuclear installation or whatever in Iran, then that would be the only missile. The Iranian people would finish it. They're just waiting for a spark. So, and the regime knows this well. I don't really think that the Islamic Republic is in a position to enter the war. So again, this is a big dilemma. If they don't, Hamas will be eliminated. If they enter, they will be eliminated by themselves. So forget about what Amir Abdullahian says. This is just nonsense. They know well that they can do nothing. Otherwise, they would enter the war right in the first day.
Yes, thank you. It's about, first of all, that Hezbollah will intensify its attack. Of course, not Iran itself, but in a direct way.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex. Any other questions? Mr. Maki, I saw you just raise a hand. Anyway.
Oh, that was a thumb up to the opinion.
Okay. So if no other questions, so I'd like to thank Dr. Rezaei for the insightful lecture.
Thank you very much,
Dr.
Dr.
For the tough realities we have all around Israel, and of course to understand the Iranian ambition by supporting Hamas and other proxies around Israel. And thank you all for joining us in this session, and we do hope that all of you had some thoughtful meanings of this session, and hope to have Dr. Rezaei again next time in
What pleasure.
Other issues, hopefully more positive. Inshallah.
Inshallah.